Saving Prince Jehyeon, episode 20 of The King's Affection begins with Hwai and Jehyeon shocked by Lord Sangyeon being freed. Hyeon rushes into the room with the scripture, a poem that Lord Wonsan wrote in the past. However, his use of the word moonlight is code for his treason, specifically on the day of the coronation. Upon hearing this, Hwai has Jehyeon's coronation immediately postponed, with Hwai making sure the prince is escorted to safety by Hyeon. Hwai promises that nothing will happen to him, and encourages the boy to leave. Fighting for the crown, meanwhile, fighting breaks out in the palace. With Lord Sangyeon, Ki-Jae, working purposefully in the midst of all this, his secret army comes face to face with Hwai's loyal guard. Both groups square off, with Hwai standing toe-to-toe with all these men, and fighting her own battles. It's ironic because Ki-Jae hangs back and watches. The soldiers target Hwai predominantly, but Jehyeon comes to her rescue before she's bested. With everything looking bleak, a whole horde of soldiers come rushing in to help. And the man leading them, Yoon Seok-jo, Jehyeon's father. If you'll remember, he was sent out to supervise these soldiers last episode, but he returns at the right time to prove his worth. As Jehyeon's father survived the battle, he protects Hwai, and tells her to stay someplace safe, deciding to take this fight on himself. Stay alive. You're not forgiven yet, she says, before taking off with Court Lady Kim, Eunuch Hong and Jehyeon. The latter though, stays behind to fight alongside his father. When we catch up with him a bit later in the episode, Seok-jo is badly injured. In the heat of the battle, Ki-Jae makes his move and stabs Seok-jo in the gut. It's a callous and cowardly move, but as this proud soldier bleeds out on the floor, Jehyeon drops and stays by his father's side. As blood dribbles out of his mouth, Seok-jo tells his son not to forgive him. As he mumbles Jehyeon's name, the man passes away. A noble death for a man that was very much on the wrong side of this conflict for long stretches of the season. What happens to Prince Jehyeon? Elsewhere, Hyeon has his own battle to attest to. On the way out the palace with the prince, he's blindsided by his brother. He's held up a sore point and outnumbered. Just before Jehyeon meets a bloody demise, the Queen Dowager shows with a bow and arrow. Wonsan is too smart, though, and soon thwarts her threat, instead having the Queen Dowager taken inside. And just like that, he turns and slashes Prince Jehyeon across the chest. Good grief. Hyeon is shocked, and promises never to forgive his brother for this act. With the lifeless body of the prince brought into the palace, Hwai sees the young boy dead and is heartbroken. After all, she promised him that everything would be okay. She's reeling, and even more so when Jehyeon appears, distraught and covered in blood. Hwai's big decision, with little other choice, Hwai stands by her morals, and decides to confront her grandfather, and concede the throne to Wonsan. She doesn't want any more bloodshed and believes this could save lives. Before she leaves, Hwai requests a hairpin from Jehyeon. She promises to stay alive for long enough to allow him to do that, as Hwai touches his cheek and tells the man that she loves him. Meanwhile, Ki-Jae arrives before Prince Wonsan, and makes sure his men save his life no matter what. He's going to take over as king and, of course, be the new puppy for him to control. For now, the pair, and their army of course, meet Hwai and her survivors out in the courtyard. There, she concedes the throne and implores him not to sacrifice anyone else. Ki-Jae and Hwai's confrontation. As they sit together, Hwai is brought a broth from the physician. She knows exactly what this means, and before she dies, decides to drink a cup of tea with Ki-Jae. Her smirk though tells a very different story. Now, it turns out Court Lady Kim actually spiked the tea with her grandfather's poison. Holding the woman's hands, she told Kim kindly that she considers her to be like a mother, and implores her to do this, knowing she could well die as a result. Hwai essentially sacrifices herself to save the kingdom. The pair of them begin coughing up blood after drinking their cups, with Ki-Jae eventually collapsing and doubling over. Just before Hwai succumbs to the poison, Jehyeon comes rushing in and holds his lover. As she fades out of consciousness, her beautiful dream soon turns to a horrible nightmare, left alone outside in the gardens. How does Hwai survive the poisoning? However, Hwai survives her poisoning, and awakens to find her grandfather is not so lucky. He's died as his heart wasn't strong enough to fight this off. Now, it's not initially clear upon first glance how she survived. So naturally this reviewer rewatched the scene several times to be sure. The camera never actually shows Hwai pouring her own tea. For her grandfather, the tea is almost at the top of the cup. For Hwai, there's a delay, while tipping the cup into her mouth before she slurps. Based on this, one could assume that she did drink the tea, but potentially with a half cup, or even just with a little splash down the bottom, allowing her to fight off a smaller dose of poison. With the help of the physicians of the palace, she may well have had extra help and given antidotes to stop the poison spreading so quickly. What punishment does Hwai receive? With the conflict over, Jehyeon and Hwai embrace and allow themselves to feel the weight of the world ease slightly. Ki-Jae is not to be buried, and he's given a dishonorable death, taken outside the palace gates and presumably left to the crows. Now, given everyone believes that Hwai is dead, if she changes that and declares herself to be alive, there will be big punishments for impersonating the king. The Queen Dowager decides to do a kindness by Hwai. She agrees to keep her identity a secret in exchange for Hwai living a quiet life. Now, our court maid has never been one to shy away from her responsibilities. She's done pretending to be someone she's not. Too many people have died, and this could be used against her. Instead, Hwai is going to face the music and atone for whatever punishment is coming her way. At the meeting, a few of the ministers actually side with Hwai. Despite her gender, she's always done what's right for the nation, and for that alone, they believe she deserves some leniency. Eventually this leads to all the other officials dropping to their knees and pleading with the new king to have mercy. Well, the king decides to give her old life back, erasing the records of what happened in the court and allowing her to be free. How does the king's affection end? With order back in the court and all our supporting characters happy and content, we cut across to Hwai, who is now using the name Seon, and Jehyeon, who are out hunting together. They're living the simple life just like they always wanted. As they head down to the shore, the pair embrace and kiss under the falling sun for the day. The sun sparkles like diamonds off the water as Jehyeon promises to be by her side. Walking up the shore though are our supporting characters, including Court Lady Kim, Eunuch Hong and Jehyeon, who are joined by Hein, as they greet our main characters once more. The king's affection bows out with a really solid finale, rounding out all our big plot points with a heavy amount of action and excitement in the first half of the episode. This entire segment was brimming with tension too. Seeing Jehyeon and Jehyeon's father both killed was pretty shocking, although the latter was perhaps foreshadowed given what happened before. In fact, I'd actually say his death is quite reminiscent of Boromir's from Lord of the Rings, sacrificing himself and redeeming his character at the end. It's a great send-off to a man that's largely stuck to his principles, even if they're mired in shades of grey. The ending with Hwai and Jehyeon is suitably predictable, but also a little contrived with the poison. I genuinely thought they were going to go the route of killing Hwai to show how feudal gender is in the grand scheme of things. However, keeping her alive does make sense, even if her surviving the poisoning isn't completely explained. However, I've done my best to try and explain this away in the recap above. Out of all the historical dramas this year, King's Affection is arguably the one that's managed to maintain an air of enthusiasm and intrigue from start to finish. The romance has been well worked into the story, and there's some great character development across the chapters too. In the end, this historical K-drama bows out with a satisfying final episode, rounding everything out with a neat little bow, while not dragging out its story unnecessarily. The ending of the king's affection, Yoon Seo becomes royal commander, and continues to stand by the king's side. Ha Kyung is now officially a commoner and lives an ordinary life, where she can freely visit his father, and doesn't have to worry about her worth as a queen anymore. Court Lady Kim and Eunuch Hong continue to serve the royal palace. Is King's Affection a happy ending? So bittersweet. I love a happy ending, and the King's Affection gave the perfect happy ending that all of us could have hoped for. The episode was full of thrill and action in the first half, extremely emotional in some places, and a surge of happiness and rainbows in the last half. What happened to Prince Wonsun in King's Affection? Unfortunately, Hein could not save the prince as he got killed by the hands of his brother, Prince Wonsun. Before he could kill Hein as well, Yoon Seo saves him by injuring Wonsun. The battle took away the lives of Prince Jehyeon and Yoon Jae-yoon's father, which was another emotional scene to watch. Is the King's Affection a true story? The King's Affection is set in the Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1910, but features entirely fictional characters. Heavy fictionalization and emphasis on romance, rather than true events, are general trends seen in recent historical K-dramas, leading some viewers to question how truly historical they are. Is the King's Affection worth watching? All of the actors' decisions make perfect logic and are in tune with their characters from beginning to end. This isn't an overly dramatic and overblown narrative with foreseeable outcomes, so you'll be engaged until the conclusion. We recommend that you watch this series since it is well worth your time. Is the King's Affection finished? The King's Affection Season 1, Episode 20 Recap, the finale ending explained. The king's affection finally ends the journey with an affectionate ending for everyone. The king's affection finally ends the journey with an affectionate ending for everyone. Will there be a season 2 of The King's Affection? At the moment, there has been no confirmation on whether there will be a season 2 of The King's Affection. And there probably will not be for a while considering the secretive nature of K-drama commissions. What punishment does Hwai receive? With the conflict over, Jehyeon and Hwai embrace and allow themselves to feel the weight of the world ease slightly. Ki-Jae is not to be buried, and he's given a dishonorable death, taken outside the palace gates and presumably left to the crows. Now, given everyone believes that Hwai is dead, if she changes that and declares herself to be alive, there will be big punishments for impersonating the king. The Queen Dowager decides to do a kindness by Hwai. She agrees to keep her identity as secret in exchange for Hwai living a quiet life. Now, our court maid has never been one to shy away from her responsibilities. She's done pretending to be someone she's not. Too many people have died, and this could be used against her. Instead, Hwai is going to face the music and atone for whatever punishment is coming her way. At the meeting, a few of the ministers actually side with Hwai. Despite her gender, she's always done what's right for the nation, and for that alone, they believe she deserves some leniency. Eventually this leads to all the other officials dropping to their knees and pleading with the new king to have mercy. Well, the king decides to give her old life back, erasing the records of what happened in the court and allowing her to be free.